Let us read from the book of Isaiah, chapter 65, verses 8 to 10. Thus says the Lord, as the new wine is found in the cluster, and they say, do not destroy it, for there is a blessing in it. So I will do for my servant's sake, and not destroy them all. I will bring forth offspring from Jacob, and from Judah, possessors of my mountains. My chosen shall possess it, and my servants shall dwell there. Sharon shall become a pasture for flocks, and the valley of Achor a place for herds to lie down, for my people who have sought me. Have you ever searched everywhere for something only to discover that it was already looking for you? There are stories of parents frantically searching a crowded marketplace for a lost child, only to find that the child had already been brought to the information desk where announcements were being made. While the parents were desperately searching, the child was already waiting for them. In many ways, that picture captures the message of Isaiah 65. We often imagine ourselves as the ones searching for God, but this chapter reminds us that long before we ever began seeking Him, He was already seeking us. Isaiah 65 is God's gracious answer to the heartfelt prayer recorded in chapters 63 and 64. The people had finally come to the end of themselves. They confessed that all their righteous deeds were like filthy rags. They admitted they had wandered from God's ways and pleaded, O Lord, you are our Father. Be not so terribly angry. Isaiah 64, verse 8 to 9. They longed for God to reveal Himself once again. God's reply begins with a surprising revelation. Not first about the future, but about His own heart. He declares, I was ready to be sought by those who did not ask for me. I was ready to be found by those who did not seek me. I said, here I am, to a nation that was not called by my name. Verse 1. What an astonishing picture of divine grace. God is not hiding from humanity. He is not reluctant to forgive or unwilling to save. He stands with open arms calling, here I am. Salvation begins not with our initiative, but with us. Even our desire to seek Him is a response to His gracious invitation. The Apostle Paul later quoted these words in Romans 10 to explain how the Gentiles, who had never pursued the God of Israel, found salvation through Christ, while many who possessed God's law rejected the Messiah standing before them. Jesus expressed the same truth when He said, you did not choose me, but I chose you. John 15, verse 16. The story of redemption is always the story of a God who lovingly takes the first step towards sinners. Yet, that raises an important question. If God was so willing, why did so many fail to experience His presence? The answer is painfully honest. God says, I spread out my hands all the day to a rebellious people. Verse 2. Picture a loving father stretching out his hands toward a stubborn child who refuses to come. This is God's description of His relationship with Israel. He had not abandoned them. He had patiently invited them again and again, but they insisted on walking in their own ways. Their sins were not merely acts of ignorance. They deliberately pursued idolatry, sought spiritual experiences apart from God, practiced rituals He had forbidden, and even became proud of their supposed spirituality. They said to others, keep to yourself. Do not come near me, for I am too holy for you. Their religion had become a mask that concealed a heart far from God. That warning speaks just as clearly today. It is possible to attend church faithfully, sing hymns with enthusiasm, and know many biblical truths while quietly resisting God's voice. We may enjoy religious activities while insisting on our own plans instead of His will. God desires more than outward forms of worship. He longs for hearts that respond to His call. His hands are still stretched out today, but He will never force anyone to come. Because God is holy, sin cannot be ignored forever. His patience is immeasurable, but His justice is equally perfect. Yet, judgment is never His final word to those who truly belong to Him. Beginning in verse 8, the atmosphere changes beautifully. God compares His people to a cluster of grapes. Though much of the vineyard appears spoiled, someone notices a cluster that still contains good fruit and says, "Do not destroy it, for there is a blessing in it." God says that for the sake of His servants, He will preserve a faithful remnant. This has always been God's way. In Noah's day, there was one faithful family. In Elijah's day, there were 7,000 who had not bowed to Baal. During the exile, there remained those who feared the Lord. At Christ's birth, there were humble believers like Simeon, Anna, Zacharias, and Elizabeth who were waiting expectantly for the Messiah. God's promises never fail because He faithfully preserves those who seek Him. Then God describes the inheritance awaiting His servants. Places that had once been symbols of devastation would become places of blessing. Sharon would again become fertile pasture land. And even the valley of Achor, once remembered for judgment, would become a resting place for God's people. What a beautiful picture of God's restoring grace. The Lord does not merely forgive our failures, He transforms the very places where we once experienced defeat into testimonies of His mercy. From there, the contrast between the two groups becomes even more striking. God declares, "My servants shall eat, but you shall be hungry. Behold, my servants shall drink, but you shall be thirsty. My servants shall rejoice, but you shall be put to shame." Verse 13 and 14. These are not arbitrary rewards and punishments. They are the natural outcome of two different ways of living. Those who seek satisfaction apart from God eventually discover that nothing in this world can satisfy the deepest hunger of the human heart. Wealth cannot do it. Success cannot do it. Pleasure cannot do it. As Augustine wisely observed, our hearts are restless until they rest in you. On the other hand, those who seek the Lord discover what Jesus later promised. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Matthew 5 verse 6. Notice that God's servants are not defined merely by their future destination. They enjoy His presence even now. Their joy is rooted in a relationship that circumstances cannot destroy. God even promises them a new name, symbolizing a new identity, a new relationship, and a new future. Their past failures no longer define them because they now belong to Him. Finally, Isaiah lifts our eyes beyond the present to the glorious future God has prepared. For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth. Verse 17. The prophet describes a world overflowing with joy instead of sorrow, security instead of fear, fruitfulness instead of futility, and peace instead of violence. Jerusalem becomes a place of rejoicing. Families flourish. People enjoy the work of their own hands. Most wonderful of all, God's presence fills every part of life. One promise in particular captures the intimacy of that future kingdom. Before they call, I will answer. While they are yet speaking, I will hear. Sin has always created distance between humanity and God, but one day that barrier will be completely removed. Prayer will not be an attempt to persuade an unwilling God. Instead, his heart will already be moving toward his people before they finish speaking. The chapter closes with one of the Bible's most beautiful pictures of peace. The wolf and the lamb shall graze together. They shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. Verse 25. The curse that entered creation through sin will be dramatically restrained under the righteous reign of Christ. Harmony will replace hostility. Violence will give way to peace. Creation itself will reflect the goodness of its King. As we step back from Isaiah 65, we see that the chapter presents two different destinies. One belongs to those who continually reject God's invitation. Though his hands remain stretched out toward them, they insist on their own way and ultimately inherit the consequences of their choice. The other belongs to those who seek him. They become his servants. They receive forgiveness instead of condemnation, joy instead of shame, satisfaction instead of emptiness, and the sure hope of sharing in his glorious kingdom. Perhaps the greatest encouragement in this chapter is that the destiny of those who seek God begins long before eternity. They already know his presence, his guidance, his peace, and his transforming grace. Every step of faith reveals that the God they were searching for had already been calling their name. So today, if your heart longs for God, take courage. His invitation has not changed. He still says, "Here I am." He is nearer than you think, more willing to forgive than you imagine, and more eager to welcome you than you deserve. The question has never been whether God is willing to receive those who seek him. The question is whether we will respond to his gracious call. Those who seek the Lord never seek in vain. Their destiny is secure because it rests not on the strength of their search, but on the faithfulness of the God who sought them first. One day, every sincere seeker will discover with overwhelming joy that the God they were longing to find had been lovingly calling to them all along. Here I am. Here I am. God bless.